Okay, being empty of personal interpretation. We were just talking that exceptional brain function is happening, and you can characterize qualities that's occurring where someone is in an exceptional brain function state. Someone could have fallen off a bicycle and suddenly they play music like unbelievable. It's like, what happened? You know what I mean? But the person is integrated after that in sound, and they're integrated in their feeling and vision. Something's occurred which opened up often corridors where light just floods into these corridors and opens up, lights up the rooms so that you can see things suddenly, and the mind can then perceive new possibility as a result of this experience. And so 3 centers of your brain are basically quiet. After a moment in time somebody has this unbroken meditation, 3 areas of your brain no longer are needed. And what's that? This is the areas of your brain which is criticizing and has a lot of don't, won't, can't, should, must, try, but only and things, which isn't an exceptional brain function. It doesn't mean that who's exceptional isn't critical of their own thinking. It's that nothing where they are is having an internal dialogue about what they're doing. So you really could say it just is controlling internal dialogue, because if you controlled internal dialogue, you can play like great. It's like, whoa, you can sing too. You see? You know you're more in this sweet spot. And so sometimes something happens, like you can hear sound suddenly panoramically. It's like, wow, you see? So suddenly there's something exciting that comes along. You feel an acceleration of the feeling of love that you have. And this is eye-aware, you see? It is a slight acceleration feeling of love. And it's like more gamma wave. So it's a faster wave that you're emitting. And this causes those who are receiving this to be more in an alpha, theta state themselves. And we naturally just fall into this. So being empty of personal interpretation is what you've got to do. So in eye awareness, a light second, right, it's a bit of a slow slug, really. You're seeing a slug slowly go across the footpath. It's wrong, you know. Light is too slow. You need to be with this modern time. Light is very slow. Dark is fast. You have to understand the speed of darkness, okay? But light comes out of dark because it's much slower than dark, you see. And then we can see things when it slows down. So the slowest thing we can see is light. And then the slowest thing we can hear is sound. And the slowest thing we can feel is solid. And it goes like this, you see. But it's all the same. Magneton density. But in an eye awareness state, a second could be broken down into a quadrillion units. Yes, and it is. So there's nothing really actually simultaneous, actually, you see. Something happens before something else. Yes, it does. Okay. So in a JC quanta, which is a Jubb constant, a constant really is something which is forever a universal condition as an axiom. So you can go into one bag and you can get a constant out for mass, length and time of the quanta of the particle that makes space up itself. And you're going to go down to a quadrillion units in a second. And so within that moment, there's many, many messages that went forward or went back, of course, and adjusted what came forward in a light second. So eternity really is you slowing light down as a second and deciding ever more by having time in there and having space. So for you to succeed, you're expanding the things which was contracted. you're using your vestibular sense to move out of wherever that was. You've got this movement in the vestibular sense which is being applied, and you're more in your inspiration, which is your breath in through your nose. And your state of consciousness is more to your inspirative breath through your nose. It's lengthened. And this is starting to tap endogenous opiates. It's going to tap beta endorphins, which is natural opiates. It's tapping amphetamine, because it's like you're anticipating having a really good meal and you're having these feelings inside. And these neurotransmitters and substances are being created which cause you to be more integrated. And it only happens as a result of your being empty of personal interpretation. You see? So as you're receptive in life, you've controlled internal dialogue, because internal dialogue can take you out. And this whole work really is about you being empty more, not really having any internal dialogue. And so you have an infinite capacity, yes, in this state, to be flexible. Yeah, whoa, to achieve your outcome, you see? Because what's there? Nothing. You've got emptiness inside. Can anything stick? No. Does everything just pass through you? Yes. Does anything affect you? No. It's like, okay. It's like, why? Because you've got this empty center point inside, and the only thing you have there after that is affection. It's like, oh my God, you're kidding. It's like, no, that's it. Just these two things. Being in balance with each other though, right? It's like called perfect detachment, you know. So tracking, you know, territorial distinctions is really what this work is a lot about. And distinctions exist of this territory that you're in eye awareness, which we've been talking a bit about. And this first is about your being empty of your own personal interpretation, you see. Because if I was in there having a personal interpretation while I'm speaking to you, suddenly that could have taken over. And you can feel if it does, you see. So, yeah, you know, the most important thing is for me or anyone to be able to have listened speech so that what's being said is being drawn from your ears, the listeners. The listener's ears is drawing this out. And you yourself, the speaking, you're just over there somewhere looking at the whole operation, but basically listener is the one who has caused you to speak, yes? And so these are skills which over time one picks up a bit, but if you're happy, you know, it's just natural that you're going to be kind of doing more things like this. So in an eye-aware state, you're empty of your own personal interpretation, and these areas of the brain no longer really are present. You are. The emptiness that you have is in your opening and the mind being open, and you can see it because there's an existing cloud bank often, and you have to have a gap in that cloud bank. Yeah. Otherwise it can be seen that the sun mightn't be shining like it can be through to the valleys, you see. And you don't want to be seen just jumping out at somebody otherwise, because that's what it would be seen as more, you see. So by you being empty of your own personal interpretation, you've let go of your internal dialogue, you're able to hear and you're able to pace something which someone said. And if you're going to lead someone, then you've got something you can pace and lead. but you must have something you can pace to have rapport with people that you're with. And rapport is like money in the bank, you see, for opportunity. So a pause is displayed. You can see a pause where someone is. And this is more an eye-aware state, like a gating reflex. The listener can pace something said, and this is you with a gap in your cloud bank. Yeah? So that you're coming out from your feeling, you're using auditory words, and you're exiting the communication with your eyes. And someone hearing can hear this is going on. We can hear panoramically, and our vestibular sense can sense direction where sound is being projected, and is this more circular cupping cradle as a centric state underneath itself, which will have a characteristic shape. So all composers' music has a characteristic shape. So really, you're really unique because you've got a quality in your own being, in a happiness, and the hemispheres of your brain are synchronized. And as your brain, the hemispheres are synchronized, don't you have more amplitude of energy available? Yes, you do. A lot more, because their synchronization of your hemispheres creates this higher amplitude for you to have. So these are territorial distinctions about your knowing, you see. And you can start to be interested more in analog sculpting, and analog itself is what we've been talking about, which is non-verbals. And having greater ability in this area, you have a better capacity to clear away or where there can have been an impoverished map somewhere. And this work, isn't it? Because you can use this. Why? Well, because people's map of reality could be embellished. And they might have an impoverished map, so it's not helping any of us. All of us, we need to be out of quorum sense. So being aware really what is real versus what's fictional. And so you're into being inside yourself where you're examining the generalization that's been used, and is what's relevant given to you. Can there have been things which should be but it's not a proper generalization? So as you're looking at where the generalization is, because that's a brain process which you and I use. So there's 3 brain processes. Generalization is one. You have to delete a lot of information, don't you? So it's sort of like whether you've got selected information or not, you see? And then you're constructing things as well. And so how is what's there constructed? And is this valid? So these are areas which you can go into, because inside there is where you'll find the information that's needed. Because where I've generalized and you point out that the generalization might be weak in some area, great, because that's the map that I've had, and it came from a generalization. It came from me having deleted information, which when you shared something with me, all of a sudden I knew something more than I did. It's like, well, wait a minute, no, let's jump with this. This is right on. So being open is where you don't have any internal dialogue, and to do that you really have had to be empty more of your personal interpretation of things. So no barrier is, and you have intimacy with a subject. No barrier is, you can explore some realm and you can go into the depth of it because you'll be intimate with the subject. But where any barrier was, that would be a barrier to the intimacy that you have with some subject that you're investigating and that you have some devotion of your attention to in how you're serving. So eye awareness really is a state of progress in knowledge, and over time you become more super conscious, of course. So your form really in being empty is your personal interpretation. So you have personal interpretation, which is empty. So she's not interpreting anything. It's just like the leaf fell outside the window, and it's empty of that except the leaf fell outside the window. No one's interpreting it. Someone walked across the floor, and they just walked across the floor. Nobody's interpreting things, you see. Because within something, something is. And you in our aware state can see what this is. So a leaf falling outside a window is simply a leaf falling. And it isn't present where you are to have fallen outside the window for you to have a personal interpretation about that. It didn't fall outside the window for you to be having interpretation such, you see. So keep in mind, happiness and emptiness is really the form that you have where balance is, and you have preposition, which is creating a relation between the noun and a verb or adverb, and a substantial relation between the noun and the adverb or a verb. And it's describing this, which is a preposition, so all words that relate to prepositions like on, forward, back, through, in, up, down. These words are vestibular because they're relating to your whole body movement and things. And so the more that you're aware of what is it that when you're smooth, you're going in a certain direction, and certainly you're not moving away from something, because like obviously you move away from things which is not so comfortable, and you're moving toward things which is truly terrific. You know, you should be using direction this way, right? Some people have got it reversed. That's not right. You see, the vestibular sense is to be associated. You're using direction to go toward, and you're having things within. So to do this, you have to be empty more inside. But otherwise, beyond and during and while and with are all examples, of course, of vestibular prepositions. You start to have the ability to start to track what is, where somebody can have a balance more, like a colour like presenting pink might cause someone to completely come back to normal inside themselves. Showing somebody like a picture of themselves which is white might cause them to feel, uh-oh, there's a lot of fear going on. So colour has its submodalities, and the way that you present things, every single thing really is some language, actually. And so you really learn how to track and learn about these territorial distinctions that we've been talking about, the vestibular sense, and how the vestibular is used. So as you're moving forward and you're having things within, you're more associated to whatever it is, because that's the direction in association. Dissociation would be all things where direction is being used away from, outside, and off rather than on. So on is more associated, off is more dissociated. And you have to be able to associate and dissociate to subject matter, but basically in life you have to be more remained in an associated state, basically. So you're really learning about how ongoing the vestibular sense can be used. So spatial orientation that you've taken could be internal or external, and it should be a 50-50 thing. So someone's orientated external and they have an internal orientation as well, good. And also to your referential index, where did you get the information from? Did that come from you or did it come from somebody else? You should have a 50-50 relation there. You should be able to say, you know, be open to anything 50% exact that somebody says to you, and you should also have an internal reference. But what would it be if you only had an external reference, you didn't have an internal reference? And what would it be if you had an internal reference but no external reference? You see? What would it be if you're only externally orientated, which many people are in their youth, and finally they become able to go more deeper inside and they turn inward more? But what would it be if you were only inward and you never ever were able to be, you know, in the world, you see? So balance, it's a 50-50 relation, these things. It's about internal orientation and external orientation, and internal and external referential indexing and things. So to be able to do this, you only could do it as you're empty inside You can't be doing two things at once. As something was written on a piece of paper, you don't want to write over it. You have a brand new piece of paper to write something down on, and the same with a recording or anything else. Anyway, hope you're having a wonderful day as you're listening to this, and look forward to catching up with another show coming out of this little red book.